Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Josh, that is Jason, that is Jeff and Jeff. Our guest for tonight, this is Conversations on the Fringe, live with you every Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we talk about everything weird, wacky, interesting, esoteric, occult that goes bump of the night, paranormal, UFO, whatever it really is that expands our minds beyond the current paradigm. Behind those current limitations in reality, and it helps with that growth of the physical and the spiritual being, and takes us out of our normal everyday life. And we do a daily show that's more politically derived, not necessarily politically derived, but current what's happening in the sense of this global conspiracy. So it's good on Friday nights to get away from that and kind of sit back, relax, and talk about these things that evolve around spiritual growth. Tonight, our guests, Jeff Laurin and Jeff Walsh. Jeff Laurin is an intuitive card reader, Reiki practitioner, actor, producer, director, artist. He's also sober and a trauma survivor. Jeff Walsh is a trauma survivor as well. Went through corporate success and homelessness, 4 addictions, 29 months in prison, and now is a transformational life coach. These two gentlemen are going to talk to us tonight about intuition, intuitive card reading, energy healing, and about their struggles in life and how they've come to this awakening of consciousness and this light within inside themselves that is now the guiding principle for their lives. Jeff and Jeff, how are we doing tonight?
Man, amazing.
Yeah.
We're here, right? Yeah, we can't complain. What a great opportunity, not to sound cliche.
Yeah.
But it's true. What a beautiful time to be alive, right? The fact that we're having this conversation the way we are, the technology, the growth in human consciousness, and I think it's just a beautiful time to be alive, and I'm super excited to be 6 feet above ground still and have these opportunities to continue to share what it is that I believe is key for our wholeness and our wealth and our wellness, and that is ultimately understanding we are our greatest healers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it starts, and everything starts with understanding we're energy, right? We are pure energy, we are pure consciousness at the core of who we are. And I think understanding that helped heal my life and change my life drastically. So thank you for having me.
I appreciate that. And is it Jeff or Ziggy?
You can go by Ziggy if it's going to make it easier to relate to us, but it is Jeff. Yeah, that's just a alias that I came up with a while back to hide from people I didn't want to find me.
I love it.
And it kind of stuck. But yeah, I'm also really happy to be here, and thank you for allowing us to come in and share some energy with you guys tonight.
I appreciate that. Now, Ziggy, Jeff, you have a TikTok channel, which is kind of popular. So tell us a little bit about your TikTok channel, how this came about, and what you do on it.
Okay. Well, I think right at the beginning of 2020, I went through a transformation. I went through letting go of some trauma that I was holding on to, some personal growth. I also got sober, which was pretty interesting. And actually, this time last year, I was still smoking 20 joints a day, at least 20 joints a day for the last 30 years. So my 1-year anniversary is January 8th. Meeting Jeff Walsh was one of the reasons why I became sober and why I started doing intuitive card readings. A friend of mine, weird enough story, she pushed me onto TikTok to do some singing. I like singing. I'm not the best singer. Mm-hmm. During quarantine, we were doing some singing, and she's like, "You need to go to TikTok." And I'm like, "I'm not fucking going to TikTok. What this is bullshit." And
all those teeny boppers.
And then I got bored. Yeah, and then I got bored. I'm like, that's for kids. I'm not going, but I'm really glad I did. I got on there, started jumping into people's rooms like Jeff Walsh, who was doing intuitive card readings and sharing his life transformation. And I started getting card pulls from people telling me, trust your intuition. You should be doing stuff like this. You have a lot of strong energy and abilities. And I started picking up some cards. Yeah. And as I got sober, I started to be more present, which allowed me to show up for other people and for myself. And I tell people all the time, when I started showing up for myself, the universe started showing up for me, right? And it was really weird because the girl who told me to come onto TikTok 6 months later came to me for a reading. So Spirit sent her to send me to get to start doing cards so that she could get the messages that she needed to hear 6 months later, which blew me away when I put it all together, right?
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. I love that because I was on TikTok as well. I had a pretty fast rise, and they got rid of me just as fast as I rose up there. But I was talking more in the sense of the truth movement. Now, my background is 25 plus years in research in the esoteric mysteries and the occultism. I'm a deep researcher at that level, especially how that portrays into our modern world. The derivation of cults, of evil, of Satanism, of Luciferianism, and also of what we would call white magic and black magic, the derivation of those, how those come about, the processing of how those all derive. So that's kind of like my background in all this, and I put that together very, very nicely and neatly. Done energy work before in my life, had massive different experiences, and I'm excited to hear about your guys' story tonight, because this is really what it's all about. It's about this... this finding, this introspection, if you want to call it, this in esotericism and occultism, we have something called the great work, and it's the work of the self. It's the work of developing the self to a point of spiritual wholeness. This alchemical marriage of our physical reality and our spiritual reality, where they come together, and we come to this point where illusion, delusion, where mystery and intrigue kind of drive this shedding of what the mysteries are and really reveal itself to us. And this happens through this process of knowing ourselves, of getting to know ourselves. And it sounds like you guys have both had this process. Now, other Jeff, Phoenix in the Rising, right?
Yeah.
So how did this happen for you?
Wow, man. You know, I mean, we need about 3 hours for that.
We got
it. So, you know, my story's interesting. When I was 20, I'm 44. When I was 21, I had what I would call a spiritual awakening, my first one. And it happened in a nightclub, actually, in New York City on ecstasy, right? So, you know, I had this epiphany, this awareness, just this, you can't explain it, right? I just knew that there was something greater, right, than what I had already thought. And this was at about the age of 21. And so because I grew up around fundamental Christianity, I took that experience and I turned to fundamental Christianity, and I was all in. Hook, line, and sinker. I mean, you know, I went after and I began to read the Bible inside and out, and I listened to everything that everyone had to say about what life looked like and how you should live, because I had this experience. So I had to put a meaning to the experience, right? And what happened was, and I'm not going to get into the nuances of it, but along that path, I discovered that I never felt good enough for this God. Right? This God that was in the sky, that came from this fundamental religion. You know, it always taught me that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't valuable, you know, I was a wretched sinner, and God forbid you study anything outside of that norm, right? I was literally told by my youth pastor to not read any other material, you know, like the indoctrination was real. Right. And so this led me along a path. And I now look back at this whole journey and I understand why I went through it now. Right. It was so that I could teach and educate and, you know, teach people that the word occult isn't scary. It just means mystery. Right. Like, you know, so, I mean, just all of that. And so long story short, I go through years of this like struggle with my faith because of the understanding of the Bible and this and what God wanted from me, and I never felt good enough. I struggled with addiction, and so that kind of kept me in this shame mindset, and eventually that led me to just complete brokenness. I went through a marriage and a divorce, which really broke me, and I'm skipping kind of quick through this, but yeah, that kind of broke me, and I was living the American dream at this time, right? So still struggling with this dichotomy within, this angry God and me never feeling good enough, but still living a functional life. And I was success in corporate America, you know, covered the entire West Coast for a large software company, owned a house by the time I was 27, wife, 2 kids, right? The American dream. And yet I was broken inside. And that led me to go through a divorce, which led me to being introduced to crystal meth. Now I'd always
that damn crystal, man. Everybody has to, like, you know, she always enters at the wrong time. Divorce. Crystal comes in, is like, I don't want to put my lips on you. I want you to put your lips around me, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, that damn bitch.
And that's what happened, man. I fell in love with you know, as we called it back then, Tina, and it literally within 30 days of my first use. Now I was in a bad state already, and I'd already struggled with depression throughout my entire life. So this was just like a catalyst. And within 30 days, I lost my multiple six-figure job. You know, I was homeless and arrested for the first time in my life within 30 days. So I went on a spree for about 4 years, 4 years of being homeless, in and out of prison, served about 29 months in federal prison. I got out in 2016, and I had what many would call a Kundalini awakening. Yeah. Where energy just started to surge through my body. And it wasn't anything, I wasn't doing breath work. I was just walking in a mountain, and all of a sudden this bubbling of energy in my stomach just started to bubble. And it went all the way up into my chest, into my throat, and it just exploded through me. And I could feel every single piece of my face vibrating, my pineal gland right here pulsating intensely. I felt like energy was pouring out of my head. And literally, I felt like if I would have pointed my hand at you, I would have knocked you over with the energy that was coming out of my hands. And this went on for a few hours. And what it was it brought me to a place of weeping and crying, and just like, it felt like everything that I was holding in, all the trauma, all the belief systems, everything was just pouring out of me. And I had no clue what was going on. It was kind of scary. It didn't align with my Christian, my Christian understanding. And this happened about 3 times over a few months. The third time was so intense, my entire body was shaking so intensely that I crawled into bed and begged it to stop. Like, it was intense. And then I had to learn how to integrate, and that changed my whole paradigm. That changed everything. I started to question everything that I thought I believed. It led me to believing that the Bible wasn't this perfect, inerrant word of God, and that hell wasn't a reality, and and it just, down the rabbit holes I went. For about 2 years, I went down every rabbit hole I could possibly go down. And now, this last year and a half, just really integrating the healing and the wholeness and the understanding now. It's kind of like, I don't know if what your thoughts are on psychedelics and stuff. It's like going through a psychedelic experience and then finally integrating that experience. And that's kind of where I'm at. And that's what led me to energy healing and card reading. When I started doing card reading, a lot of people said I was doing the devil's work and, all that stuff. And I had to overcome all that. So that's kind of what led me here.
That's crazy.
It really is.
Jay and I are no strangers to psychedelic drugs.
Jeff, quite honestly, we have a very similar life. When I was 20 years old, Josh, how much younger than you?
8 years.
So Josh is 12. I'm 20. Josh is 12.
Okay.
He's living with he had to be living with mom at the time, or living with dad. And we were still living in our old house. So our parents were separated. They were both with new people. And I think he was with my dad. But we were living in the old house that we grew up in during childhood. And the cops came to my house, arrested me. I got in some big trouble, struggled with drugs and alcohol. And I really would say, even though I cleaned up my act, like in my 30s, I still drank excessively. But 40s, something happened. I still don't know really what it is, but something happened. And I always jokingly say my frontal lobes developed, and I started making better cognitive decisions, right? But I know really that's not it. But something really, really happened. And, we started doing the show, was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
A year and a half ago. And I've developed so much more. And, I haven't had that moment where what you were talking about in the mountains there, but I want that moment, right? Because you set yourself free, right? Like, I think think it's really interesting. You know,
Well-
I almost say what I say is that you stopped being fake and you became who you really wanted to be. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yeah. You know, for me, it's incredible. I literally am not the same person. I literally died, right? The old Jeff that was kind of created through trauma had that experience, and that old Jeff kind of died. I think it is really the rebirth, the egoic death, right? All of these things, you know, and even if you look at some of the scripture, you know, even Jesus says that living water would flow through your body, right? So it's like literally we have that living water living inside of us. And what I've learned now is that I can recreate that, and I'm just over the last few months really fully understanding the kundalini and the energy, but I can recreate that now in breath work. So if I do holotropic breath work or Wim Hof breath work, I can recreate the same experience. So, you know, we can raise that energy and we can change our vibrational status so that we can clear our energetic body through breath work and through meditation. And I'm grateful for it because it's a part of my daily practice. I'm passionate about healing. You know, I'm passionate about living our best life. And, you know, it's because I experienced darkness. I mean, I spent 40 days in an isolation cell in a federal prison. I mean, the darkness and the suicidal desire and just the brokenness that I was in, it was a manifestation of my inner brokenness, right? This isolation cell was a manifestation of the brokenness within me. And that's a scary thing to look at, you know? So I'm just super grateful to be where I'm at. And, you know, Jason, I would encourage you to, if you're not, go work with a holotropic breathwork person to help you facilitate, you know, that energy. You might find it pretty powerful.
Also, Jason, I think, you know, a lot of people expect that they're going to have this huge awakening. You know, Jeff had a certain experience, but everybody's experience is different, right? For me, I had a whole bunch of small little awakenings. And again, for me, it probably started without me even realizing it back when I used to do psychedelics as well. You know, like I had so many experiences, you know, ups and downs. I mean, from 14 to 17, I did probably acid 800 times or more, you know, like,
you're well groomed like Josh and
yeah, you know,
we did a ton of acid.
It was an experience, right? I should probably be clinically insane to some people, but for me, it was personal growth, but it was also, you know, hiding some of the trauma that I had been through as a child, you know, and to get to where I am now, and like you said, like in your 40s, you know, I suffered loss. I lost my cousin to a needle overdose the beginning of, I think, 2020 or the end of 2019. And it kind of put me on this journey of, you know, how broken he must have been to be in that situation that allowed me to get to a point to want to heal. But, you know, I'm turning 44 December 25th. And it definitely was an eye opener, you know, as I got into my 40s, that I started connecting the pieces more and started realizing that I had pushed down all of this, you know, stuff that I was holding on to. And it was time to connect with my inner child, right? I had a nervous breakdown at the beginning of 2020. And it wasn't because of the pandemic. It was because of, you know, everything that was going on. It was because of realizations that I had. And luckily I reached out to a stranger, you know, over Zoom, who sat with me for 2 hours and listened to me pour out all of my heart, you know, crying and whatever. But he had walked a similar path, and, you know, he basically just led me in the direction of realizing that I had abandoned my inner child. Right. And that I had to grab that kid by the hand, give that kid a voice, and tell that kid I was never going to let him go. And for me, that was like majority of the therapy that I needed. Like, it all clicked for me. Right. It was like I had abandoned that person. I had numbed myself to the point of, you know, forgetting a lot of the stuff that had happened. And then that's when I let go of the weed. You know, I'm, like I said, I'm a year and 5 months off of alcohol, and I'm almost a year off of weed. And that was life changing, you know, and this had to do with, like you said, getting into your 40s and having these small little awakenings throughout my life. As I got into my 40s, I started to have a little bit bigger ones. You know, there was some dreams and things that had happened. Unlike Jeff's, you know, Jeff had this amazing experience that I'm really grateful for hearing about his experience, because it helped me understand what I was going through when I met him, you know, and listening to his story and listening to his trauma and listening to him, you know, getting past all of it, and how he, you know, was the Phoenix rising, right? How he overcame it was a big part of me getting to where I am in my journey, right? And, you know, again, that's why I invited him to come out here. He's got such an amazing story, and he's a big part of my journey too, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, it's crazy. It's funny that we all have like levels of psychedelic drug use. I started using LSD at about 13 years of age, and I stopped at 19. The last trip I did was at 28. And actually, my first book, which still in the process of writing, is called Transcending the State, what I learned from over 150 LSD trips before the age of 18. And it's about this. You don't know it when you're going through, when you have trauma in your life, you don't know it. You know, you're not cognizant of it. You know, you're not sitting there going, man, I got some trauma in my life. I need to work this stuff out. You know, you're like, man, some bad shit just happened to me, or man, bad shit is happening to me. You know, and you're lost. You're like in this dark place. You really don't know how to get out of it. It's like this narrow perspective of view. And a lot of us turn to drugs, and it's interesting that we turn to psychedelic drugs because it does adapt us to this neurological perspective that we have later in life, because it does bring about this growth. For me, it was a lot of those psychedelic trips I did to see things and, you know, trip and all this stuff. But instead, I had these profound internal journeys. I would find myself reading books where words were floating off the pages, but I was still absorbing the information. You know, I was reading the Bible, I was reading philosophy, I was reading, you know, the Corpora Hermetica. I was reading all these things that talked about different levels and access of knowledge. You know, I would go into meditative states. I would try to transcend my consciousness, expand it as much as possible. And then I joined the military, which basically put it all down into this small little compressed version and said, shut up for 10 years. And I just wasn't that person, and I had to grow. And I had a very similar experience, Jeff over here with the Phoenix, to where one day you just, like, you have all this knowledge, and you wake up into this knowledge, and you realize how expansive the consciousness, mind, the universe, God, all of it really is. You start to realize a glimpse of the truth of reality, and you get a taste of it, and you say, I can't let that go. Like, I want to dedicate my life to that, but how do I make money doing that, right? Like, that's what I want to do. I want to touch that every day. I want to go out there and expand upon that, but how do I incorporate that into my life? And what you realize is the first thing that you need to do is you need to heal. The first thing that you need to do is you need to make yourself right. You need to balance yourself. I call it optimization. Is you have to get yourself into a state of optimization to where we, in occultism and esotericism, you have something known as natural law. And that if you operate against natural law, you have karmic infliction. You have bad consequences happen to you. If you operate in ignorance of natural law, the same thing happens. You have karmic infliction. If you operate with natural law, you have good things that happen to you. You have rewards and benefits, and the universe rewards you, and you develop trust with the universe over time. And what you want to do is you want to balance all the bad habits and behaviors in your life. Get rid of all the negative thoughts, or at least tame the negative thoughts and get it in balance with natural law. And that takes a long time to do, and that's one of the reasons I turned to occultism and really deeply researching it, because I wasn't finding it anywhere else. I would look into Christianity, I would look into fundamental religion, and I could not find that level of self-introspection therapy to help myself, to help me heal emotionally for whatever my traumas were in my life. But that's what I did. And when I did, I found profound healing. I had this experience. Our father passed away in 2015 of a heart attack. And it was pretty traumatic for me because I was the first one that got called. I was the closest to him. So I worked for an airline at the time. I flew over there immediately. I had to deal with all the initial stuff with all of his friends who were, 60-year-old drug addicts, basically mooching off of this man, the only one with a job, right? And so, I'm trying to figure out what happened. At first, there's signs that he might have been murdered, and there's like, your mind's going nuts. Anyways, I had this whole traumatic experience where, I find myself blaming myself for his death because the cascading effect of his reality, how it happened. I introduced him to a book. This book causes him to get a divorce. The divorce causes him to live on his own, causes him to start going out, reliving his 20s, and he dies in the parking lot of a bar, right? So he wouldn't have been there if I didn't give him the book, and so I hold all this in. And then one day, like, it came to an apex. I'm watching in Colorado, and we have magnificent thunder and lightning storms here. And I'm pretty well versed in science, and I understand how things operate. And I'm watching this thunderstorm roll in, and I start feeling the coldness roll in. If you've ever seen a thunderstorm roll in, the heat moves away. Well, what's actually happening is the heat is rising, and the vacuum in its place produces coldness. So that cold air is not cold air rushing in. It's actually heat being removed from the air. And I imagine that heat is being removed, and it comes up to this point in the center between the cloud and the air, and it forms a low pressure and a high pressure system. And this point that's developing all this moisture is basically has ionization in the air, because every water particle is certainly charged, right? And there's static electricity in the air. And it's bringing all this up to a point. It's like a capacitor. And you have charge building up on both sides. And you see these big, thick, black clouds rolling in. And these clouds get denser and denser and darker. And then all of a sudden, you see a flash of light. And that's that barrier of that capacitor of the high and low pressure systems breaking that electrical barrier, collapsing, producing lightning, and thunder is the collapse of it. And then all of a sudden it starts raining. So it was like this electrical barrier released all that energy that was condensed in that cloud. And I went, oh my God, as above, so below. That's my body. That electrical potential that we're talking about is repression. That's stress. That's anger. That's hatred. And that if I allow this barrier to keep on building up charge, it's going to make those clouds, my emotional body, darker and more saturated. And that I have to find a way to release my lightning, to release my thunder, to allow the rain to fall out of myself. Interestingly enough, that weekend I went on a trip with my wife, and we went up to the mountains, and I ate something, and I got incredibly sick. I got food poisoning. And this was the scariest food poisoning I've ever had in my life. I mean, 8 hours straight, nothing but vomiting, and ended up going to the hospital. And I'm laying in the bed in the hospital, and they get me on some fluids, and I just can't stop crying. I'm just like crying. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like delusional. I'm hallucinating. It's not a psychedelic hallucination. It's a different type of hallucination. And this woman, little old lady, walks in and she grabs my left hand. And she's got white hair. Doesn't look like my grandma, who's already passed away at this time, but grabs my hand. And she starts telling me everything's going to be okay. And I say, well, who are you? She goes, well, I'm the woman here at this hospital that helps people pass. And I'm like, oh, no. She goes, no, nobody's just dying. You're fine. You know, I'm here to help you. And I realized that she was ethereal, that she wasn't a real person. And she starts telling me everything about my life, about my father, talking to my father, all this stuff. And next thing I know, I'm like just water's just pouring out of my eyes. And, I come out of it and I'm not sick anymore. I'm feeling better. And my wife tells me I just cried like heavily for like 3.5 hours. And it was like the most alleviating experience that I had in my life. And this lady obviously comes and joins me a few other times on my journey. 2 days later, actually, in a chakra meditation that I did. And she manifests at every chakra level. At the basal chakra all the way up to the crown chakra in different forms. And each form was a different woman in my life that taught me a different lesson, from former partners, girlfriends, to grandmas, to just people I've randomly come up with. And she manifests as, this was me, and this was this lesson. And it comes to this curtail where, she shows me her true form, which is basically the feminine aspect of myself. And teaching me lessons to make me more acceptable, more balanced in understanding of my own energies, of myself, of allowing my spirit to fully come into my being. And it was probably one of the most prolific healing experiences I've ever had in my life that happened to me through my own mind. Like no outside force that I know of was mitigating this, right? But I think healing is just so critically important in that everybody has to find their own phoenix. Everybody has to find their own path of healing. And that's the beauty, is nobody can hold, yes, somebody can hold your hand and guide you to where they have been, but you'll ultimately pave your own path.
Man, beautiful story.
Yeah.
Beautiful. God, you held my, not a lot of people can hold my attention. You had my attention the entire time.
Awesome.
God, I am such a proponent of healing, and that it's an inside job. And I'm also just penned I'm editing. I basically just finished my first book that is taking people on the journey of my healing. And it includes psilocybin as an adult, with the intention, the set, and the setting for ceremonial healing, and the benefits of microdosing, and how it impacted my life. Someone like me who was putting needles in my arm, slamming heroin and meth.
Yeah.
The amount of nerve damage and the amount of neural damage that takes place in someone's body, the trauma, right? So to heal these things, it's really important. I'm really actually passionate about bringing the truth to the recovery community. Like the fact that Bill W., I don't know if you guys know this, the founding father of AA, was a psychedelic, believer. He believed that it was one of the key components to actually healing addiction, right? Not just dealing with addiction, but healing addiction, because addiction is simply the symptom of that trauma. So when you start talking about healing, and man, I just light up, because this is my path. This is my place. There's other people that are speaking about this, but I believe that microdosing psychedelics, and of course I'm not a doctor and this isn't medical advice and all that stuff, right? Like, this is just my own personal awareness and experience. But I think the studies that are coming out of Harvard and Johnson and Wales, all these big schools and research, it's going to change and revolutionize the way we deal with mental health and addiction. There was just a great article done by, I believe, Time, that said psychedelics might be the greatest development since Prozac, and they were comparing it to Prozac. Now, I was on Prozac for years, so I could talk about that as well. But I believe that it is going to help people heal severe issues that, necessarily a meeting doesn't heal, right? Like, I can go to a meeting, a recovery meeting. That's not going to heal my nervous system.
Right.
That's going to put me in a place that might keep me sober. But sobriety to me is not the end all be all. My grandfather was sober for the last 25 years of his life, and he died of severe cancer because he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes until his dying day. He was never healthy. He was sober. I believe we should be speaking about, how do you become healthy? How do you become whole? How do you live in wellness and abundance? Not how do you get sober? Because sobriety is just a symptom of wholeness and health, right? Healthy people don't become addicts.
Yeah.
And and so that's something that I'm really passionate about, and going into the spiritual realities of, and this isn't a mock against AA. There's a lot of great things that come out of that. Community is basically the biggest part of that. But, to affirm, hey, I'm Jeff and I'm an addict, that is reaffirming something that is after I am is the most powerful thing we can say about ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm not an addict. I am healthy. I am whole, right? I'm going to reprogram my subconscious mind in this reality with what I tell myself about myself. So if I'm constantly telling myself I'm an addict, then energetically I'm going to create that. That's a subconscious reality. And that's why we see the statistics, and that's why we see these crises, and that's, so when you start talking about healing and your story and the psychedelics, and man, this is the way of the future. And I think these are the conversations that we need to have. you know, and I've got a 14 and a 12-year-old son, and if they were sick, that's the route we would be talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you've lived it too, Jeff. You know, you're a living example, and I mean, I've seen it in many people that have been around me that microdosing has really helped them with depression. You know, a friend of mine's daughter came to me with her mother and was like, look, you know, I just had an IUD taken out, and she was suffering depression, and ended up, you know, microdosing, and it saved her. You know, she was about to go on depression pills and everything like that. And it was like, you know, this was an experience for her that, you know, changed her life, because like you said, what it does is it just puts those pieces together, you know, in your brain, and it just kind of allows it to happen. And, you know, for me, luckily, you know, psilocybe cyanesis here grow in Vancouver wild,
Nice.
you know, in this area. So I'm well versed in that, as Jeff knows. You know, I am sober. I haven't done the psychedelics in 5 years. Am I against it? No, I'm not. And I don't consider that a drug. I consider it medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I was feeling depressed, or if I really, you know, needed them, I would definitely do them. And I definitely recommend them to people. And again, like he said, I'm not a doctor, you know, I'm not a therapist, but, you know, I am living proof and have seen people that have went through it, that it has saved their lives. Right. So,
you know, I love this conversation. So one of my good friends, Ben Stewart, he did the show on Gaia called Psychedelica. If you guys have ever seen it, he's done many different documentaries. Really well
I've seen
versed.
Ben's work.
Yeah, Ben's awesome. We've had him on the show many times, good friend. But we've had this discussion as well. And one thing about psychedelics is specifically LSD and any DMT-5 or dimethyltryptamine, is what they do is they stimulate the man, now I'm going to forget the names. So you have your neurons, which have dendrites, and at the end, what happens is when you go through severe positions of stress, your dendrites get worn out, so they're continuously going back and forth like this. And so if you imagine that, you know, you're going through hardcore drug use, heroin, or so forth, these dendrites can stick. They can have, you know, broken receptors. They can have, you know, parts of the opiates stick to them, or whatever it might be. But they have biochemical, bioelectrical, and biosequential problems. And one thing that the psychedelic drugs do is they reset those neurological patterns and promulgate growth of new neurological connections.
Correct.
And so that's why it is so profound in the sense of depression and healing and trauma. On the psychological aspect of it, it's actually, I wrote down because I wanted to talk about it. You know, you talked about AA. AA represents the 12-step process, right? And, you know, we're about to talk about tarot. You know, you start talking about astrology. You start talking about the 12 astrological symbols. You start talking about this repetition of the number 12, that Solomon's Temple, the 12 houses of bread. In esoteric,
12 disciples.
The 12 disciples, right? And this 12 actually represents, and this is one of the deeper mysteries, for at least what I've come to understand, is the 12 archetypes of mind.
Yes.
And that you have this inner journey of minds that you have through many different lives. Jeff right here, his birthday is on December 25th. Mine's on December 28th. We're both Capricorns, which means that we have very, very similar characteristics in the sense of how our minds operate. Well, guess what? That is energetically imprinted on you at the time of birth due to this archetype that exists within the human consciousness. And so we go through various lives existing in these different archetypes of mind to master them. This is what the Wheel of Karma is all about, is mastering these different archetypes of mind. So here's the key, is Buddha always talked about this, is that you could go upon the 12 steps of life to finally obtain enlightenment, to free yourself from the constraints of life. The constraints of life are the archetypes that we live in. They're the boxes that we live in. This is where ego exists, and ego is that defense mechanism that keeps us in that very tight and constrained archetype. In Solomon's Temple, which is representative of the sun and the moon, the left and the right hemisphere, the body, the mind, it's the two temples. The eyes are Jacqueline and Boaz. They're the defenders that project reality out there and trick you to think everything's outside of you when you really want to go in. The contracted God is the seat of the soul, right? But you have to go through the 12 houses of the bread. These are the 12 archetypes of mind that you must traverse within your lifetime. And if you master them, you get this reward of realizing yourself, of knowing and discovering yourself, because you become whole in this life. So when you start talking about this in the psychedelic journey and how it's referenced in healing, I think it's beautiful, because this is what you start to realize when you start coming into things. You start to see that the reality is much greater. You start opening your mind up to, hey, you know what? I am a Capricorn, but why do I have these characteristics that are outside of my personality? Why is it when I endure in spiritual growth, all of a sudden, I feel like a different person? Because you literally are becoming a different person, because you're traversing the 12 houses of mind, the 12 psychological profiles that humanity has constructed. Carl Jung was notorious for this, and this is why there are 12, and this is why he talks about it. And he actually studied tarot and derived astrology and tarot into his psychological premise and theories.
Yeah, I was just listening. You ever listen to Marcus Aubrey?
Yeah, Ben's good friends with. Ben's actually working on his documentary.
Dude, he's a powerhouse. I was just listening to him today. They were talking about the archetypes, the magician, the lover, all these different archetypes that we embody throughout our life. And it's such an invigorating, powerful awareness when we understand that we're so much more than what we thought we were, right? Like, and yet it's so humbling, right? It brings us to this place. And I think that's why a lot of people that we see that become voices, or that, transcend, generally have this period in their life of darkness, right? And I do not believe that it is a requirement. However, I see it as a very common piece, because it forges something in the heart and the character and the nature of that essence and that human, if you will, that I don't know if is necessarily forged the same other ways. I do think it's possible, and because I have 2 children, I don't think my children have to go through what I went through, right? I really don't believe that. But it's just such a powerful thing when we start to look at the world from the esoteric reality. One of the things, I was ordained as a pastor. I was considered prophetic or a prophet within the evangelical community, right? I speak a light language, otherwise known as tongues, right? So there's all these superpowers and gifts that we have. And what's beautiful is when we transcend the religious aspect of it, and we just simply understand that we are all on the journey, right? We're all on this path, and we're all on this healing journey, remembering who we are, owning who we are. And I think that we have to look at what our ancestors did. If you haven't read The Key to Immortality by Brian Marisuka, I highly, highly recommend it. He talks about how Western culture was created basically with ayahuasca ceremonies. Like, he goes into the reality that Christianity was, when you eat of the wafer and you drink of the wine as the bread and wine,
the Holy Sacrament,
the Holy Sacraments, it was changed.
They're actually talking about the holy mushroom.
It was changed into something that doesn't have, when was the last time you ate one of those wafers and had an experience? It's, we can get into it, and there's a lot of, but it's very, very, it's more than likely that it was changed in the early foundation of the religion, Christianity. So I think that the healing properties of psilocybin, that's my, and DMT, all of it is just, it's incredible. It's incredible, man.
I've never done DMT. Done a lot of LSD. I had a bad trip the last time I did, and just kind of, I've had my opportunities to go down to South America. I've been there multiple times in the military. I have a friend who takes people down there on spiritual awakening journeys. But never done ayahuasca. And honestly, very similar to you having the experiences when you do holotropic breathing or Wim Hof breathing. My book is called Transcending the State, because I learned later in life how to do the same thing without drugs. how to transcend reality through hypnagogic states and staying conscious within the state and then projecting outwardly after that and being able to take my mind anywhere I wanted to take my mind, even the places of complete like spiritual ecstasy where it's words can't describe the experience. I say that you hear a music, but there is no music playing, and it's the most beautiful music you've ever heard, but there's nothing playing. In that you know everything, and the way you come to this realization is you're in this sense of you know everything, and you say, well, if I know everything, then what do I know? And you ask yourself a question, but there is no question to ask because you know everything. And so at this moment you realize that you know everything, you realize you know nothing. And that's why God had to create man, or had to create consciousness, because if you know everything, if you are everything, you know nothing. There is nothing to know because all questions are already answered. There's no questions to ask. There is no intrigue. There is no mystery. And that is the driving principle behind ourselves, of who we are, the discovery process. This is the spiritual awakening, the spiritual birth. It's the phoenix rising. I love that, man. But you know, I just, this is profound. I love this conversation because, you know, it seems like we've all had very, very similar experiences in the sense, all coming from different, you know, different points of trauma or just life experiences. So how did you guys meet? So how did that happen?
Jeff, you want to tell the story?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was on TikTok and I was looking for answers, I guess, right? And I stumbled upon Jeff's live on TikTok, and he was pulling cards, and I resonated with his energy. And I kept going into his room, and yeah, it was interesting because I met a lot of people. I met my Reiki master on TikTok. I met a few psychic mediums, some life coaches, like Jeff's a life coach as well. And it just, you know, I was kept returning to Jeff's room and his energy, right? And, you know, like I said, I credit him in a sense to guiding me into sobriety, guiding me into a different mind frame, guiding me into, you know, believing in my own abilities, right? Like when I was a kid, I used to hear voices saying my name over and over and over, right? I've always known I've had these abilities. And to go back to what we were saying earlier, we all have these abilities, right? And it's about tapping into them and removing some of the blocks that we put on ourselves. And everybody's like, oh, you know, I wish I could do this. And it's like, well, you can, but everybody has different strengths, right? In their abilities, right? And just listening to Jeff's journey and what he's been through and being able to overcome addiction, overcome, you know, leaving the church, being shunned, you know, going to jail, all that just kind of resonated with me in my healing and allowed me to get to where I am now. And, you know, like I'm now level 3 Reiki practitioner, heading into master level to be able to help and teach people as well. And yeah, so that's kind of how we met. We met on TikTok. I've met some of the most amazing people on TikTok of all places, right? It's changed my life.
Crazy, man. TikTok.
Yeah, you know, and by the way, now you've got 50,000 more followers than I do. I want to throw that out there now because, you know. Well,
let's give you credit. You did have almost 40,000 and then deleted your account because of all the bullshit. Because TikTok, you know, they've banned us all. I managed to get my account back. They keep small banning us, but you got your account back up. You still have a lot of followers. But yeah, no, we all support each other, guys. Okay. So thanks, Jeff, for that. I appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Hey, and Josh, I wanted to make sure that, because I know that a lot of people might watch this back, and this is really important for me to say, is that, and this is my belief, this is my opinion, not everybody holds this belief or this opinion. I am reverently in awe of the medicine. There is a high level of reverence in my life for the use of these medicines. I do not personally think that they are recreational.
Agreed.
I do not believe that these should be used without awareness and understanding, without guidance. So, you know, this is really important for people to understand set and setting. And that it is a healing, it is a medicine. And these medicines are powerful and should be treated with such reverence and awe as they deserve to be. And one of the reasons that I struggled to get involved in the medicines in my late 30s to try to help my depression and addiction was because I had bad experiences when I was in my early 20s because of the way I utilized it and the set and the setting and all of that. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I get that out because to me it is sacred, truly, truly, truly sacred.
Yep.
And it's not for kids, you know, you should have your brain fully developed and all that stuff. And, you know,
I'm a prime example of that one. I started at 13.
Well, I did it too young too. I did it at 18 years old. I did acid for the first time at 18 years old, and my brain just wasn't ready for it. I mean, of course, we are here, but I think I might have created more of a little bit more of a different path by using that at such a young age without an awareness and stuff like that. So
I 100% agree. I appreciate that wisdom as well. So talk to me about pulling cards. So is this tarot?
Yeah. I really want to know about this card stuff, so I'm happy you brought this up.
So is this tarot? Are these tarot cards?
Yeah, well, for me, I use a couple tarot decks, and I have a lot of oracle decks.
Okay.
So they're a little bit different. Both me and Jeff and I, we both are intuitive card readers, so we can just kind of look at the cards and read them. Jeff doesn't even need cards. He's got a strong insight. I mean, I do too, but I like the guidance of the cards because I trust that, you know, when I've connected to somebody's energy, that I'm just the middleman, you know, so their spirit team is basically letting the card fly out that they need to hear, and that allows me to tap into it to deliver the messages, and I trust my instincts to be able to deliver those messages to the people that need to hear it, right?
Awesome. So for everybody out there, tarot cards have been around for a very long time. Now, the word tarot itself, they say, is, if you go to any etymological dictionary, so forth, they're going to tell you that it really has no derivation. They really don't know where it comes from. But we can actually trace this word back, and it derives from the word terra firma, which represents the earth and the solidification of the earth. And the tarot is the inner earth. So this represents what we would call the inner zodiac or the inner archetypes. Each card represents a various aspect of ourself that is also representative of a various aspect of nature. I'll let these guys explain it from here, but just kind of a little basic overview. But go ahead, guys. Feel free. Take it.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, ultimately like Jeff was saying, I can personally like channel a message, right? Don't actually, like, I can speak light language and then channel a message. Some would say I'm channeling a message from Palladians. Some would say I'm channeling a message from Holy Spirit, from angels, whatever. The cards are really just a tool to maybe give you a message that you already know, right? This is already wisdom that you have. It's just giving you a confirmation. I like to say that we're not healers, although I do kind of see myself as a healer because I've healed myself, but that we just bring a message that catalyzes that inner awareness within you, right? So the cards, you know, like you said, you know, this card is going, if I pull this card and I'm doing a reading for you and you've given me permission is always.
I give you permission. Do it. I think people would love this. I'm going to give you permission.
All right.
Don't scare the living daylights out of me.
No.
I'm interested in what's going to happen here, but I give you permission.
All right, Jeff. Do you want me to do it or?
Yeah, you go ahead, brother.
All right, I'm going to pull tarot cards for you. All right. So I'm just going to probably pull a basic, like 3. We'll see what comes up. So, Josh, I'm just going to ask you to basically set the intention to give me access to your spirit team or to your inner awareness and your energy, your spirit. All right. We thank you for a direct, concise, and precise message for Josh that is most beneficial to his inner world and to his life in this moment. Whew, here comes one. You see them popping out?
No.
It's because
it's all good.
All right.
Dad's in there flicking cards out of his hands.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, he really needs to learn this lesson.
All right.
All right.
Let's see what we got here. I'm excited. Or should I should probably be scared, but hey, it's okay.
No. Don't be scared, man. No fear. Right? No fear.
I don't have fear, my friend.
Good.
False
good.
expectations appearing real.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk about that after this. It'll be an interesting conversation with you guys.
All right, so Six of Wands. The Six of Wands is really just to remind you of your creative gifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
That truly there is so much creativity inside of you. I feel like this is a representation of the creativity that is inside of you waiting to be released, right? These birds are a representation of this wanting to be released, the wisdom that's inside of you, the insights. I feel like sometimes you hold back because you're afraid of what other people are going to think and what other people are going to say, which is kind of interesting because you're on the, Redpill podcast, which I don't know how, but I'm sure there's some topics that you maybe hold back a little bit, but there's definitely some wisdom and some gifts, spiritually speaking, that you might want to look at tapping into and fully releasing. This brings a lot of creativity. And the Eight of Wands is also all about understanding that you are truly a powerhouse when you tap into your story that you tell yourself about yourself and tapping into what you create in the future. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times you might ruminate on the memories of the old instead of focusing in on the memories that you want to create, right? So understand that when you hold on to the memories of old, it's really just living in the past. There's this powerful place for you when you really get into a meditative state, because you can project in a very powerful way. But sometimes you get caught up in, the nuances of life, and I get that. So just focus on what it is that you want to create in your meditation practices. And temperance comes in to remind you that there is a balance taking place inside of you that's been happening for about 7 to 10 years. And it's been a lot of healing of the mixture of divine masculine and divine feminine energies. So there's been this intermingling and awareness. So the divine feminine in your life is going to be intuition. It's going to be your psychic abilities. It's going to be empathy, right? There's going to be a lot of that. And sometimes you kind of, not purposely, but that's kind of like stuffed under the table. Really tap into that intuitive gift that you have and really tap into that empathy and that compassion that's inside of you, because it's really a gift. And the Prince of Disc is to remind you that grounding your energy is so, so important for you. Barefoot on the earth, right? Understand also that this is about financial gain. There is a lot of blessings in your life if you will focus on what it is that you want to create, that earth energy, right? That earth energy is in tune with the masculine energy. And when you focus on creating abundance in your life, the abundance that is possible in your life is going to blow your mind. Whatever you're manifesting or thinking about what you want this podcast to do, you need to 10 times it in your dreams. Whatever it is that you want in this podcast, you have to start 10 times in what the dream looks like. And boom, the Sun is the greatest card in the deck. It's your last card. This is about illumination. This is about enlightenment. This is about a prosperity. This is about fulfillment. This is about completion. This is really a radiant card that just confirms what you already know, that you're on the right path.
Ah, that's funny.
That you're on the right path, that you're exactly where you need to be, and that you have purpose, right? This isn't just like, Josh is showing up for a podcast. Like, you're reaching people, you're helping people awake, you're helping people transition in these understandings and these awareness, and you're bringing a lot of light to the earth. Even when you don't know, and this is a message to me as well, even when you don't know you are impacting so many people that you don't have a fucking clue about, right? They don't come back and tell you. They don't come back and say, hey, Josh, you just changed my life because I saw Jeff and Jeff on the friggin', that you had. Like, there's a lot of things that you bring light to that you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember your why. Hold on to your why. Hold on to your why, because your why is really going to continue to drive you when things are difficult. When things maybe aren't going the way you want, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I would be lying if I said if I didn't already know that. That was spot on, man. Really good.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something pretty interesting.
Well, hold on, Jeff. The other Jeff wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I was just going to say, I was going to add to it if Jeff was okay with that. I just felt like, I had some instincts on that reading as well, but it was a beautiful reading. And I just, are you okay with that, Jeff?
Of course.
Yeah, I just feel like, you put up a lot of walls and blockages, and I feel like there's a lot of mind chatter that's going on with you. And you have to remember what you tell yourself about yourself is super important and super powerful. So any doubt, is stopping you from that rebirth. You're in a position right now. You saw the eggs in the basket there, and it's like they're not going to hatch until you believe it, right? So, and like you said, make sure you're grounding yourself a lot and stay focused in what you want, because you're going to create it. So,
wow. So it's funny you guys said the Six of Wands, Temperance, the Six of Wands, obviously the gifts, and in both of you saw that they're hidden behind walls, that somehow it's there's not a factor of fear, but restrainment. Mm-hmm. And I think Jeff, you over here, you said that it's kind of what people are going to think of you, or it's actually not that. It's something much more deeper than that. It's repressive, actually. It goes back to the story I just told you guys. The last time I used those gifts, I gave somebody a book and they died. So you can imagine walls, right? That's how the walls create. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yep. But I want you to understand, coming from your brother, you had to understand that was meant to happen.
Yeah.
And that you might feel responsible for it, but I want you to understand is I didn't wake until after that happened.
Very true.
And so there was a lot of meaning behind that happened. Even our older brother woke, in a sense.
Very true.
So it was like the one thing our dad was always he was always the one. He told us never to trust government, right? So, but he always made us. I would say he always made us conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, you
right?
question reality.
Always talking,
question everything.
Questioned everything, and I think in his last moments here, he gave us the ultimate gift to be woke, man. And if you were a part of that, opening up my spirit and John's spirit and our other brothers and other family members, that's a great gift, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, crazy. But there's definitely walls, and I know why. I'm very well aware of it, and it's not a procrastination aspect. It's more of it's hard to explain. It's something I can explain off air. How about that?
I think
it's something I have to definitely explain off air.
I think people too forget that, we've all signed contracts to come in and out of each other's lives, right? Mm-hmm. We can go back on the should-haves, could-haves, and would-haves, and it's not going to stop somebody from, how they left because it was their time.
Yeah.
Right. We're a spirit having a human experience. Right. And I say this all the time, that we picked the people, the life, the traumas, the family, the goods, the bads, and the ugly. Right. We watched it play out like a movie, beginning, middle, and end. And then we were born. And that's why, then we forgot, and that's why there's deja vus. That's why people seem familiar. And when you start to look at it that way, it's like we put ourselves through all this because, one, we're here for a reason. We have a purpose in this, human body as a spirit to be here. But it was because we knew that we were going to get through it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. we have something that we've developed here at the Redpill Project over the years called spaceship theory. It's my theory that I've had throughout my whole life. I was in the military 10 years. I worked for a major airline. I oversaw 20 different international and domestic airports. So I've traveled a lot, and I meet a lot of people, thousands upon thousands of people. And I would randomly come across people that were just like, I know you. Like, how do we... And they look at me and they're like, whoa, how do I know you? And it all started with this relationship I have with this... I was going for my Reiki master certification back in 2009, I think it was. And I walked into this room that was kind of like in a business area, but it was downstairs, and you had to like turn it into a room. And right when I turned into the room, it was like two force fields of energy just collided. And he like immediately looks up and like, whoa. And I'm like looking at him, and he's like, did you feel that? I'm like, yeah, I felt that. And he goes, you need to sit down and we need to talk. And like we had this spiritual journey for the next year and a half, just me and him, realizing past lives and everything. And it opened my mind to this, that what if these people that I'm walking into, these energies that I'm interacting with, are people that I've had other lives with? And then we came up with spaceship theory, which is a joking way of saying that we're of a lost civilization that's destroyed itself, and we're in a spaceship traversing the universe looking for a new home. And we're all in cryogenic state and have uploaded our consciousness into an artificial intelligence. There's only about 10,000 of us. And that all the older simulations have crashed and burned because we never just really got along with each other. And so what the AI did that oversees the simulation is it created all billions upon billions of bots and allowed it to progress through our history on our last planet. And that in the simulation and multiple different variations of it, all 10,000 of us keep on running into each other. The only real people in the simulation.
You know, it's very well probably not far off, man.
I know.
I mean, look at what the metaverse. Look, I mean, geez, you know, it's it's interesting. There's something special. There's something about 144,000. I don't know what it is. You know, I can't quite figure it out. But you know what I've learned is that it doesn't fucking matter.
So in Kabbalic mystery, the 144,000 is you always have to go back to what's called root derivation of numerology. This is the same thing for the mark of the beast, or the number of the beast. The number of the beast is whole 666. Well, in Kabbalah or Germantia, 144,000 and 666 are actually equivalent. And so 6 plus 6 plus 6 is what? 18. 8 plus 1 is 9. 144,000 is 4 plus 4 plus 1 is 9. 9 is the number of man. And so when we look at that, only 144,000 will be saved. That is, man will be saved, right? So it's talking about how man will be saved, but 9 is representative of a spiritual progression, spiritual completion, where 8 is beyond God and 9 is the next level of spiritual progression of man. So there's this whole theory in Germantia. Germantia is massively complex to understand. But when you get into the Kabbalic mysteries, it explains a little bit of what the 144,000 is representative of. And what I always looked at it is that we all exist on a spectrum of frequency. That our DNA, Dr. Martin Blank, 2014, did a study that DNA is an electromagnetic transducer as well as a fractal antenna. We send and receive signals with our DNA. In that we all exist on various wavelengths of frequency. It's like a radio. Some of us are at 99.5. Most of us are at 103.5. Some of us are like 105.7 and 107.3, right? And the ones, the Earth itself is kind of sitting at 103.5 in this median where everybody's at. And we're sitting here at 105, 107 going, do you guys see it, man? Like, look at the world around us. They're going, you guys are fucking batshit crazy. We're like, no, man, look at it. They're like, you guys are crazy. Now the Earth is moving towards that 105, and we're going, I told you. And those people at 103 are going, what the hell just happened? The whole world just changed in front of me, right? So it's all about this frequency that's happening and how we all relate to that. And I think that 144,000 is representative of consciousness. It's the number for the expansion of consciousness to the next level, representing the next age of progression, that we're moving into the processional age, how we're moving out of this galactic center of density of energy, and we're moving into this open aspect where the receptiveness of our DNA is going to be more open and undisturbed and uninterfered. And this is kind of what the Kabbalic mysteries are actually talking about, the Mayan mysteries, and we can actually relate all of them to this evolution that is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, you're up. You're up. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's interesting that you say that, that some people are operating on a higher frequency, but, it makes sense why there's so many people that are now tapping into their medium skills, right? And being able to, connect with the other side and trust their instincts. And I just thought that was pretty interesting as a person who has newly started to tap into that, right? So
I love it.
Hey, by the way, I got to say this. The fact that you're born on December 25th and you look like the white Jesus, come on, bro. I mean, we are looking at Jesus incarnate, except you need to be a little bit darker for the real Jesus. But, that's all right.
Here, let me get rid of the, there we go.
There you go.
Well,
that's better.
It's actually a beautiful day to be born because it represents the regenerative factor of life, the resurrection of the sun, the increasing of the degree of the processional age. But in the Assyrian mysteries, or if you go into any of the esoteric mysteries, it represents the rebirth, right? This rebirth of self, this rebirth of what you were, Jeff, the other Jeff, was just talking about, in the sense where, you woke up and you had this Kundalini awakening, and it was as if you were reborn again, right? And that's what the 25th of December we actually have a Christmas Eve show next week. I was just on his show today. Jim Price is going to be on it. We're going to be talking about the esoteric history of Christmas. Everything from reindeers pissing Amanita muscarella piss, and the shamans drinking it, and then, and delivering
going in the chimney.
Yeah, dropping presents down the chimney, wearing the red sheath representing the Amanita, to the story of Isa, who traveled the Silk Road. We're going to be talking about all of these things. Even we talked a little bit about the Ishtarian Babylonian mysteries of how Ishtar came to the earth from the moon in an egg and was first presented to humankind as a rabbit. And this is where the whole story of Ishtar comes from. Ishtar represents the East Star, the star in the East, Venus. Venus is Ishtar. Ishtar is Easter, right? So you have this whole Passover representation. So we're going to be talking a lot about that next week on Christmas Eve. For everybody out there, we are going to be doing the raffle. Tickets will be going on sale for that. Hopefully tomorrow. We got to upload some things to the website, so you'll see all that. So don't forget that Christmas Eve raffle and show talking about the origins of Christmas. But yeah, I mean, I was born on the 28th, and they called me the Christmas baby. My mom went, I think, in labor on the 26th.
It's the worst time of the year to have a birthday.
It's horrible.
We got one special day a year, and it's overshadowed by another day. Everybody always thinks that you have something to do, and for me, if I'm not with somebody or with family, it's like if I get invited to people's dinners, then they're like, they have no clue it's my birthday. And then when they find out, they feel weird because they don't have presents or a cake, and then I feel weird, and then they feel weird, and it's like, it's a weird experience. In regards to numbers, I was just thinking, it's really weird. We were talking about numbers too, but I was born in 1977. I'm turning 44 in 2021. I thought it was 2022. My bad. I was like, those are all a whole bunch of numbers that are matching up there, but no, I'm wrong.
No, but I love numbers. Go ahead, Jay.
Jeff Walsh, when were you born?
I was 77. April. I'm a cusp. So I'm a Aries and a Taurus cusp.
Gotcha.
And then I'm a Taurus moon, and I'm an Aries rising. So I am all fire and all earth. Pretty powerful, actually.
And Jay, you are Cancer?
No, August 29th. So that make me a Virgo.
Virgo,
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
August 29th.
Which I totally, when Josh was talking about how personalities are fit or based on when you're born during the astrology, it's totally, I am a
Virgo.
epitome of a Virgo.
Yep.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Although, human design is real big nowadays too. So I don't know if you guys have heard of human design.
I have heard of it. I don't know too much of it.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. But
like creator and stuff like that.
What's that?
Like creator and
Yeah, so like what your channels are you a manifester or a generator or a projector, and then are you like a martyr, or, just understand it's basically taken astrology and created, and I'm not an expert in it by any means, but it's created, something different, but it goes aligned with astrology. But I also am very careful to tell people and myself not to allow those to, and I think you were touching on this earlier, Josh, not to allow that to limit us, right? Because we can very easily get put in the box. Well, I'm a manifester, and that means I've got to live my life only like this, or I'm a Aries, and that means that if it doesn't fit this box, then, because I think that we are limitless, right? And we can find the attributes of all the signs in our life, like you said, all the archetypes, all the gifts, and so I like to tell people, don't limit yourself into that, but utilize it as a roadmap, if you will.
That's right. It represents your strengths and your weaknesses, and how to. One thing that I've always done, and I tell this story sometimes in a funny way. When I was 21, I was in San Diego, California. I was in the United States Navy. I didn't know anybody. I had 0 friends. I lived on a ship with a whole bunch of other men. And I'm in San Diego, California. Like, what are you doing, right? You got four local colleges, 3 local military bases. You got the whole world in front of you. You got the Hyatt and the Marriott downtown where conventions are happening every day. Like, get down to the gas lamp, right? And so I venture into a bar called Martini Ranch right there in the gas lamp. I don't know if it's there anymore. It used to be at 5th and F, I think. And I forgot the bartender. It's like Doug or something. I forgot his name. But I walk in there, and the bartender's like, "You've never been in a bar before." I'm like, "No, not really." And he's like, "Sit down." He's like, "What are you here for?" I'm like, "Oh, I want to meet women, And he's like, "Let me teach you." And he taught me how to talk to women. And I will tell you, in all my life, that was probably one of the best teachers in the world. Not because he taught me how to get laid, okay? But because he taught me how to understand people. How to understand the silent language of people. Because men, we talk, okay? We are actionable figures. When we communicate bodily, physically. We have to be loud and proud. We have to get that emotion out in that word. We have to feel each other's vibration. Well, women, they communicate silently. They communicate in a completely different way. And if you can listen to the silence and you can feel what they say, you'll be the secret that they've always been looking for. And I mean this in a very, very positive way, that not like trying to, like, in a very, very positive way, that you're very receptive to who they are, and you can start to understand who they are. And this is where this thing of intimacy comes about. This thing with this chemical marriage of masculine and feminine energies. The only way that process can happen is if the active mind can become silent and the silent mind can become active. And so just as much as you have to come to the point of silence to hear what they're saying, they have to come to the point of activity to hear what you're saying.
Yeah. It's interesting. And just want to put it out there, Josh, for all your viewers, I am single. So,
I love it. I love it.
So, I'm single and ready to mingle.
Oh, man. Well, I'll have to
and
teach
I've
you the
never
silent
been good
language.
at relationships, so just not good at it. Never had them, really.
Well, Jeff, let me help you out a little bit there. Because I want to give you a little bit of information, share a little bit of knowledge with you on that. I wouldn't say that you're not good at relationship. All right? The reason I say that is because we were a reflection of the words that we say. Relationship is what the universe is all about. Everything at the very fundamental level in our existence is about relationship. We have a relationship with the Creator. I am and it is. This is the ultimate relationship. And that relationship is an exchange of energy. We go through our life creating relationships with other people. Now, these relationships are tangible things. They're like these threads that are actually created between people that exchange real emotion that is derived from real intention, right? And that a lot of people, what happens is they get overwhelmed by these threads that they connect with all types of different people, and they never sever those connections. So we have a very finite amount of relationships we can have in our life because, you know, in these physical bodies, we're very limited in the sense of the finite reality. And so we have a finite amount of attention that we can give. And that attention gets constrained to different people. And sometimes we, you know, have people who are toxic that hold on to one of those threads, right? And they steal our energy. Or we have just these threads going all over the place and we never disconnect them. So one of the things that I feel to just tell you is don't forget to renew those relationships. Remove those old relationships, right? Remove those old relationships and renew those threads of relationship that you have. Because if you feel that you're not good at relationships, whether it's with women or men or with other people, that usually comes about because our energy, right, is elsewhere.
And I've come to learn that,
Yeah.
Especially like Jeff was also, you know, one of the people who, you know, made me realize that, you know, all the sexual partners that you have, you take on all that energy, right?
Yep.
And cutting the cord is a big thing as well. But, you know, you're a Reiki master, so you understand, you know, clearing away some of that energy that's still staying in your aura, in your energetic field, right? I feel for me, you know, I was kind of joking, but I was also serious because, you know, as a trauma survivor, I was abused by men and women when I was young, right? So for me, I had to come into realizing I had never been present or, you know, offering myself in that moment to anybody in any friendship or relationship, right? Until I was, you know, 42, you know? So that's been interesting for me, this whole, you know, come full circle to realize that, shit, I've never been present in any attempt at trying to be in a relationship, right? And also, you know, I came out as pansexual in the last year and a half, 2 years, because I had to realize that, you know, for me, I was holding on to this, I couldn't be who I wanted to be, and didn't even realize that I was holding on a love for a babysitter who abused me that was a man, you know, and I was like, oh, I can, you know, I kind of knew that, you know, men will be men and I had some fun, you know, whatever, but I didn't really realize that I could actually be, you know, energetically attached to a man or a woman, right? Or just a spirit, you know, it doesn't matter what they present as, you know, that I could actually be there. So that was a big learning lesson for me that I've, you know, come to accept in the last year. So when I say I've never really been in a relationship or never been good at it, I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't present.
So one thing that I'm going to give you is a process that has been given to me throughout the years. This comes from an old magical process called Return to the Elements. We create these things that become very, very complex, very, very convoluted and integrated. Relationships, like the one you just talked with your babysitter, right? And even no matter what we do mentally, the mental work or the spiritual work, it doesn't seem to just get rid of it. It always seems to be lingering there. It always comes back. It always manifests, always resurfaces. Return to the Elements is representative of writing down in a notebook. So one thing you should always have is you have a journal. Very, very expensive journal. $40, $50 journal with very, very thick white paper. Buy an expensive $200, $300 pen, and that's how you write in the journal. And what you put in that journal is all the positive things, your dreams, your admirations, everything that you want to happen and manifest in your life, your feelings, your thoughts, right? But these old relationships, these things that you want to cut ties with and you want to return back to the elements, go get a spiral little notebook, 97 cents at Walmart with a cheap little pen, and get maybe colored pens, black, blue, and red. And what you do is you express your thoughts and feelings on a piece of paper about that. And you say how it started, what it was, what it is now to you, and that you want to relinquish it. And you accentuate words with the different colors, right? And then what you do is you tear that out of the book and you go to the backyard and you start a fire and you throw it into the fire and you return to the elements.
It's so funny that you're saying this because I give this same advice to people that I'm doing readings for, because it starts with forgiveness, right? And I had to find forgiveness for myself and for that person. And you got to write it out and you got to burn it out to the universe and allow yourself that freedom. Forgiveness equals freedom. And, you know, I preach it. So, you know, it's interesting to hear it from somebody else, you know, coming in the same way. So
awesome.
Or you could just use a selenite knife.
I love that. Selenite knife.
Cut them chords. You know, it's interesting. I made a TikTok video today. I was hiking in the mountains, and I had like this download of how important it is to cut the cords of debt, energetic financial debt. So a lot of people are holding on to, and this is a little bit different, but it's similar. It's a lot of people are holding on to the energetic cords associated with their financial debt. And really that is a creation of a slave system, if you will, that you don't actually have to be attached to those debts. You can actually cut the cords and be debt-free energetically. Because we are the magician, right? So if we are the magician, if we are the archetype in that magician, we get to create. And so it's interesting. We were talking about cutting cords because I made a TikTok video about that today. So.
You know, this is a lot of the stuff that was told to me by, you know, various things and various lessons in my life. But one of the things that I was shown is I was shown this white tether that transcended through time, that just connected me through everybody and everything in an ocean of time, in a non-linear perspective of time that just webbed out. And that some of those white tethers were black. Some of them were red. Some of them were blue, right? And that you could see the ones that were black were killing the larger aspect of the whiteness. And it would be karmically through time, right? The linearity of time. In that these threads, they hold memory. That this is where memory derives from, is from this etheric body of ours that is outside of time, and that this blackness, this darkness is a suppressed memory, something that you repress back in yourself, and you just never dealt with it. You never wanted to deal with it. You never wanted to look at it, and now it's just festering and rotting away. And that you have to find those things within inside yourself, and you really have to bring them to the surface here and now in this life, and karmically just get rid of it. You know, one of the most important things I was ever taught was attention, intention. And this is something that I think a lot of people who are outside of these circles that we're in don't get. This is the key point of the magical process, of any type of manifestation or creative process, is attention, intention. Now, when I tell people, I say I always have to define things. I cannot sit there and hear words and not have them defined, because, you know, if Jeff says a word, I want to know what Jeff defines that word as to understand what Jeff is saying, right? So when I say the word attention, I always usually ask people, you know, what does the word attention mean? They're like, oh, well, you know, it's when you give, you know, your attention to or something. I go, well, I look at it like this, is I imagine that I have an imaginary lasso, and I take that lasso around a physical object in front of me, and I take that imaginary lasso and I throw it around it, and I start pulling that lasso tight. But the object doesn't move, it sits there. And so that means as I pull it tighter towards me, as I concentrate on it, okay, that lasso becomes tighter and tighter and tighter. It becomes a stress on the line of the lasso. A line of tension forms between me and that object. A line of attention forms between me and that object, right? And so then I look inside and I say, okay, well, what if I took that same glass jar and I put it inside my mind, inside my imagination? And I took that same lasso and I wrapped it around that glass jar in my imagination. I pulled it tight. Now I have a line of intention, of inner tension forming between me and that glass. But here's the thing, is in my imagination, I can change the parameters, the outcome. I can put emotion into this glass and say, I want this glass to be filled up with water, and I want that water to come into my body and nourish my cells and help me detox my body. I can have an end state emotion come into my mind that say, I want to feel healthy after drinking this water. That's an intention. Now what I do in physical reality is I take that intention and I flow it across that line of attention that I just formed with that glass. And that's how we communicate every day, all day. And that is what intuition derives from, is from this imaginary aspect of creating these end state emotions. And this is the magical process of creation. And so that's why I thought is intention and intention are these massive processes that we have to pay attention to. And the same thing goes with creating relationships and these tethers of relationships, is we have attention and intention derived with them. That is what they actually are. They're that lasso that we're connecting with people. And if our end state emotion is not determined, then the other person's in control of it. And if the other person is complete like procrastination and they're all over the place, that's a dangerous thing to be for your energy.
Well, and it relates to energy work, right?
Yep.
The same way. You know, I call in the intention of the white light and to have that protection. But when you're sitting in TikTok and you've got, 400 to 1,000 people in your room, you're taking on that energy. Mm-hmm. And if you don't remember to cut those cords, and send back that energy and don't give it power and don't acknowledge it, like I had to learn that because, I was carrying on all this energy and not cutting those ties. And Reiki really helped me, understand that as well, is because, in Reiki, you have to, you're the middleman, you're bringing in all this energy, but then you have to cut that cord.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of it and break those ties. And some of it's white and some of it's dark, right? So, because you're taking on other people's bullshit too, right? So,
have you learned at all how to, so I always talk about the 3 perspectives of energy work in this sense is that there's givers, there's takers, and there's pass-throughs, and that a master energy worker will be all 3 at the same time, is that they can work with people, they can pass energy directly through them where it doesn't affect them, they can expend energy out to them, and they can take energy from them, but also they can transmute the energy and then give it back. And that's one of the keys of the magician, is to take that negative energy in from someone else, transmute it into good, wholesome, loving energy, and give it back to them.
That's why, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That's why it's so important for energy healers to also be healthy in their energetic body.
Yeah.
Right. So I believe as an alchemist, that is what I do, right? I take energy sometimes from people that might be dark and I'm able to transmute that energy into light. And what that requires is the ability to move the energy and to allow my vibration, my energetic body to be at such a high level that it literally changes and mutates the energy, right? So, that's why, for those of us that do energy work, exercise, being in nature, drinking water, eating healthy, I notice when I'm not like in my routine and I do energy work, I can feel it.
Yeah.
And it's super important. I've lost about 15 pounds over the last, 3 months or so through intermittent fasting and through like changing some of my morning routines and things like that, because I realize that the work that I'm doing requires me to do such. Otherwise the shadows, if you will, or the darker energy or the more dense energy will stick into my body in a sense, right? And then it literally weighs on you. And so like generally when I do card readings or something, or if I do a lot of energy work, I'll go right to the ocean afterwards, like directly to the ocean, because it cleanses, and I live a couple miles from the ocean, so I'm blessed, right? But so it's such a reality to understanding that alchemy side of things. And what's also really important for anyone that does energy work, and we don't have to take things on, right? We don't have to allow that. Sometimes we're called to transmute things, and I believe the grace is given to us to do such. And I'll not leave you with this, but I'll say this, that I do believe that you first have to learn to heal yourself before you gain what I would call an authority or a power to bring that healing to someone else. So it's important for us to learn that healing thyself is the most important thing that we can do, I believe, on our earthly plane, because it transcends and increases the energetic vibration for everything around me.
100%.
Well said.
Yeah. Awesome, gentlemen. Well, that was a quick hour and a half. Man.
It was.
Wow. Yeah.
Whew, that was awesome, man. I appreciate your guys' time, and honestly, I think we need to have you guys back on again sometime, because this was just an awesome conversation, and I think there's so much more to dive into. Now, I'm going to invite you guys. So we actually have an after show right after this, a subscription show that we go to. So if you guys want to join, it's in 30 minutes from now. If you guys are more than welcome to join, I can send you the link. Just let us know. But everybody out there will be going to Fringe After Dark in 25 minutes from right now. If you want to join on YouTube, just go on to socialredpill.com, comment on the post I made earlier, and the link will be put in there so you can all watch that for free. If you are one of the Master Patreon members and so forth, you guys can join in the Zoom where it'll be myself, and we'll see if Jeff and Jeff want to join us as well. And maybe we can continue this conversation. If not, we're going to have a great conversation about everything that we talked about here on the After Show chat. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Your links are there in the chat. We're putting those out there right now. Please go subscribe to these guys at TikToks. Check them out. And please do contact them if you want to work with them, because they are some amazing human beings. I can just tell you by looking at these gentlemen that they are definitely 100% awesome, legit, and just powerful beings in the way that they are presenting themselves. So, Jeff and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Guys, we'll see you guys in about 30 minutes. Take care. Have a great night.
Thank you.